This is the Amazing Teacher Podcast with Sam Rangel, episode number 21.
Welcome to the Amazing Teacher Podcast, where we sit down with amazing educators and pick their brains for tips, strategies, and ideas that you can take into your classrooms and be amazing. Now, here's your host, Sam Rangel.
Welcome, amazing teachers, to the 21st episode of the Amazing Teacher Podcast. This is Sam from successintheclassroom.com, and I want to thank you again for stopping by the podcast. I'm hoping that you are finding these conversations to be helpful and valuable. I really enjoy picking the brains of these amazing educators, and it's really fulfilling to be able to share their advice and ideas to new teachers. I like the idea of making a small contribution to the success of the next generation of teachers, and in the process, giving kids an amazing educational experience. So thank you again for listening, and thank you for spreading the word about the podcast. This week, my guest is Jessica Pack. Jessica is a 2014 California Teacher of the Year, and I was so impressed with all that she does with technology that I had to have her on the podcast. She makes movies with her kids. She has a few iBooks and a course on iTunesU and so much more. She shares on the podcast some great advice for teachers who are looking to incorporate more technology in the classroom. And she offers some great insights as well on how to be an amazing teacher. So listen for that. Listen for her advice on how new teachers can begin to teach without limits. That was great. That was awesome stuff. So all right, so without further ado, let's get right into the podcast with amazing teacher and 2014 California Teacher of the Year, Jessica Pack. Ready? Here we go. Today, I am so happy to have Jessica Pack, the 2014 California Teacher of the Year, on the podcast. Welcome to the show, Jessica.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for making time in your busy schedule to sit down and let me pick your brain about teaching, and I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Oh, me too, definitely.
Great. Well, first of all, congratulations on your Teacher of the Year award. What a great honor.
Oh, well, thank you so much. It's definitely representative of California, so I'm looking forward to just representing good teaching across the state.
Great. Well, again, congratulations again. Well, before we begin, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your teaching career, why you became a teacher, and maybe a little bit of your journey to get the award for Teacher of the Year in California?
Sure. Well, currently I'm a teacher in Palm Springs Unified. I teach sixth grade language arts and social studies block classes, and then I also teach a elective that's associated student body leadership. Okay. In combination with video production. Wow. And so, yeah, it's kind of a varied schedule, which is great because it's always something different. Originally, I'm from Washington State, and I was educated at Washington State University. And when I was graduating, I just started going to job fairs, and the market was really saturated in Washington. So I thought, I am so game for an adventure. I'm just going to interview with a ton of districts out of state. So I had kind of a no-holds-barred approach to it, and I just did every interview like my life depended on it. And I was offered a job, actually, right at the job fair for Palm Springs Unified. And I said, absolutely, I would love to come down and be a part of what you're doing in California. So that was 9 years ago, and I've been teaching in the same classroom for all 9 years, which is fantastic, wow. Especially as we've gone through some budgetary changes as a state. So I feel super fortunate. And I've been really blessed to be a pilot teacher in several different technology-rich environments. So I piloted a one-to-one MacBook program for 3 years, which we called the 24/7 program. And students took MacBooks back and forth from home to school, and they had 24-hour access to tech, which was wow. Great. And that's really what started my journey to becoming a technology-rich teacher. And so from that point, after that program, we did a 2-to-1 iPad program when iPads were first hitting the market for education. And then from there, we branched out into a bring your own device program that was student-centered. So I taught for several years with a really mixed platform classroom. And as any BYOD teacher will tell you, you live in this constant state of problem solving. So it was a very big learning curve, but an incredible experience to grow as a professional. And right now, I'm teaching in a one-to-one Chromebook environment with occasional iPad use to elevate the rigor of what we're doing in class so that students have a lot of opportunities to author and create.
That's amazing. I mean, I'm a little jealous because when I was in the classroom, I was like the computer geek. I was the one that everybody came to work on a computer and fix. When I first started teaching, we had chalkboards, and so there was no such thing as computers in the classroom. So when we finally get a computer in the classroom, it was gigantic, and I wanted to be able to use it. And then we got a TV connected, in our classroom, and so I was the first one to connect the computer to the TV, and I was able to show my PowerPoints on that. So I was the first one in my school to do that. I had wires everywhere connected in different places. But now I've been out of the classroom for about 3 years now, and the last 3 years it seemed like all this new technology has come into education, and there's just so much that it's just amazing what resources teachers have now when it comes to technology. And that's why I wanted to have you on the podcast, Jessica, because you are definitely in the forefront of technology. And I know new teachers, my audience of new teachers and soon-to-be teachers, I know they want to take advantage of technology in the classroom. What advice would you offer a new teacher who has a desire to use technology, just doesn't know how? What's the best avenue that they can take to take advantage of this resource?
Well, I would say first and foremost is get familiar with something called the SAMR scale, SAMR, and understand sort of your endpoint and where you're going with student-centered technology. The SAMR scale goes from substitution to augmentation to modification and redefinition. And with each level, student technology and what students are doing with it sort of increases in terms of what's possible. So you're really striving as a teacher for that level of redefinition that allows students to really be in the driver's seat and to have a really student-centered classroom where they're generating content, which is the thing that students are most engaged in. And it's what we want to do is give students a voice. We want to give them a choice about how to express their learning. And as a teacher, I refer back to that scale constantly so that I can make sure that what I'm doing really is redefining the way learning looks in my classroom so that I'm not sort of staying at that low level technology use where maybe we're just surfing the internet. We're taking it to the next level. And then I would also say to the new teacher is just make it meaningful. Don't use tech for tech's sake. Technology will always be there. And you mentioned that it changes so rapidly and there's all of these brand new tools, coming out left and right. And that's fantastic. But just make sure that what you're doing with those tools in the classroom is meaningful for students so that it's not just something that's sort of the next wave.
Right, like a new toy.
Exactly. Because,
interesting. Yeah.
The more you can train up students to see purpose in the tool, they'll choose the tool that's most appropriate for their task. And that's really what I want students to leave my classroom understanding is all of the tools that they can use to accomplish a particular task so that in their future career, they'll be able to be a problem solver and to really consider audience and task and purpose.
Very, very good. The idea of student-driven classroom, that totally almost a shift from your traditional classroom where the teacher is deciding, what's being learned. And I think technology, like you mentioned, allows that student-driven classroom to take place, where the students are deciding what they're learning, and a teacher serves more as a facilitator rather than someone that is directing them on what they need to learn. Very, very good.
And that really takes the pressure off too from a new teacher who's just starting to integrate, or even for veteran teachers who maybe have a little bit of a fear factor going on with the tech, is that if you're enfranchising students and empowering them, the onus isn't on you as the professional. Kids will be able to just take it and run with it. They're a lot more tech savvy than we give them credit for.
You got that right. You got that right. It's amazing what the kids will be able to solve when it comes to the technical issues. I had an issue with loading a new software into this computer. the computer teacher sent over this kid, a seventh grader, and he set it all up like it was second nature. It's amazing. Just blew me away. And so I think you're right. The kids know so much more than we give them credit for when it comes to this new technology. You are involved in so much. I was looking through your blog. You have everything going on. You're on iTunesU, something that I just discovered not too long ago. Can you tell us about iTunesU? I think that's a great resource for teachers, especially if they're already into the podcast, listening to podcasts. The iTunesU is another offering that iTunes has that can be beneficial. Can you tell me about that?
Sure. iTunesU is essentially it's Apple's app. It's a way to bring learning into the hands of individuals so they can learn at their own pace, on their own schedule. They can utilize a variety of resources. So essentially, it's an app that houses content courses that are created by maybe school districts. They are created by universities. And also individual teachers can create iTunesU courses. So I've created a couple of courses, some aimed at professional development for teachers and some aimed at my students so that they can have this vehicle of resources to be able to do their learning and choose their learning. So iTunesU is really fantastic to be able to use in the classroom. I would say the only caveat to it is that it is tied to an iOS device. So, it's not something I can use with Chromebooks, but it's something that I can leverage student iPods for. I can bring in the iPad carts and be able to, check them out and have students access that. And for me as a professional, it's a great source of development where I just have that at my fingertips for free all the time to be able to grow in what I want to do with students.
Yeah, and there's so many topics available to teachers and anybody. So if you want to learn about video, if you want to learn about Sky, anything that you are interested in, just becoming smarter in, it's available. And I thought that when I discovered it, I thought, wow, what a great resource, especially for teachers and new teachers especially. Well, again, thank you, Jessica, for all you're doing with technology and sharing your information and all your knowledge with teachers around the world. I think that's so amazing. Tell me about the iMovie course or the books that you have about that, because I thought that was pretty fascinating as well.
Well, I started making movies with my students back when we had our MacBook program, and the process of movie making is something that's always been a passion of mine and I've been interested in. And once we had the technology in the hands of students, I thought, wow, we can be, having our own mobile movie studios. This is incredible. So the more I started refining that process with kids and working on it, I started doing professional development for teachers. And that led me to publishing an ebook called Digital Storytelling, Connecting Standards to Movie Making. And that's available for free on iBooks download for iPads. And so that's really kind of where my journey with students took me, is to wanting to share that process of film in the classroom with other professionals. And that's really where the iTunesU course connects to, is that it's a companion piece to the book.
That must be really engaging for the kids. The kids must really love making those movies. Are you finding that?
Yes. I never met a kid who didn't want to make a movie. I'm fortunate to have sixth graders, so they love being on camera. But even I have some seventh and eighth graders in my elective class, and even they have a real charge out of being able to create to that capacity, because there's just something that connects with us, I think, as humans in the opportunity to tell stories, and to tell them digitally is just so powerful, because you can push that content out to YouTube and to Vimeo and to just really showcase the stories kids have to tell. And they always surprise me too, because they, for being, 11, 12, and 13, they are pretty poignant people, and they have some good messages to share.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. And I think, if you're having an issue with a student who's just not motivated, that's a great way to plug them into school, with the use of technology and then that movie making lesson. I thought that was so amazing, and I wanted you to share that for our audience. So thank you for that. Well, the purpose of the podcast, Jessica, is to sit down with amazing teachers like yourself and pick their brains for tips, strategies, and ideas that new teachers can take into the classroom and be amazing. I know in your career you've met many amazing teachers. What would you say are some qualities that you find common in amazing teachers?
I would say by and large, amazing teachers have visionary passion, they have extraordinary empathy, and they really teach without limits. So, in terms of visionary passion, it's different from garden variety passion because when you have a vision, you're very focused, you're driven, you have an end game in mind. And I think that it's really powerful to be able to have this idea of what learning looks like in your classroom and to be able to do whatever it takes to be able to realize that with students and to see that actually unfold. Um, my visionary passion is aimed at helping students be able to leverage technology to become whoever they're going to be in life and to be successful in a future career. I think it's possible to have, a variety of visionary, goals for your classroom, but just to be aware of it and to know what it is and have that arrow forward, that driving focus. And then in terms of extraordinary empathy, I think, what really underscores classrooms that I've been in, that I've been able to observe, extraordinary teachers that I've worked with, is just this underlying sense of empathy and this connection that's extremely positive that happens between the teacher and the students. I'm a big proponent of leveraging every tool you can. So I have a classroom Instagram account because many of my students only speak Spanish at home. And I think that having that connection with the families and the community so they can see what it is that our classroom is working toward, they can be part of that vision too. I think that that's incredibly important. So by and large, amazing teachers have those positive relationships with the families, with the rest of the community, with the students, and they really take students as who they are as people, not just a body in a chair in a room with a lesson. So that's huge. And then just the notion of teaching without limits and not accepting obstacles and just being able to do whatever it takes to bring the sort of redefined learning to your students that helps realize your vision for your classroom.
I think that's awesome. That's the extraordinary empathy. That's the first time I've heard that, but it's so great. Most of the, if not all of the guests on the podcast have talked about amazing teachers having that ability to build those positive relationships, being able to connect with kids. But the empathy part, understanding them and not just how can I say that, dismissing what's going on in their lives, but to actually empathize with them and understand it, because that's going to take away a lot of the conflicts you're going to have, because instead of getting angry at a student, you're going to look for reasons of explaining why that student is behaving that way. And I think that's awesome. Teaching without limits. I think that's so key as well. With new teachers, their first year, I know the way it was in my first year, I was worried about what my administration was going to say. I was worried about what my team leader or the rest of the teachers, my colleagues, were going to say. So I was limited. I was limited by, expectations of others. And it wasn't until you get over that, until you get a little bit of experience, that you can actually start considering teaching the way you want to teach. What would you say to a new teacher who wants to teach without limits but is still feeling a little bit hampered by expectations of others?
I would say that it's okay to be patient and to recognize that your credibility is derived from your work ethic in the eyes of others. And so the harder you work toward establishing a vision and seeking knowledge and being the best professional possible, the more freedom, I guess, you'll get from others, and the more respect that you earn as a professional at your school site, in your district, and just understanding that every single interaction you have with other people on campus, particularly other adults, is going to directly shape their perception of you. So, for example, when I first started making movies and we had these MacBooks, you know, I had kids take their MacBooks outside, and we filmed outside, and we filmed anywhere we wanted, and I laid down ground rules for my students, and you know, we were successful in that, and I thought, wow, this is a great lesson. Everything's going really well. I love this. And it wasn't until years later that I found out from my principals that they were just sweating bullets in the office because they didn't understand what we were doing outside.
Wow.
Saw us running around with all these laptops. But it was really, I think, their perception of my work ethic that they decided to write it out, see where I was going, and what the end game was instructionally for the kids, and if it was of benefit to them. So, you know, sure enough, it was, and we started entering film festivals. But it's really your reputation as a professional that sort of buys you that room to just go full bore for what it is that you want for your students.
Wow, yeah, that is so awesome. Your credibility is determined by your work ethic.
Yeah.
What a great quote, and one of those great takeaways for our new teachers from the podcast. All about how you work. Maybe, and I like your example because you might be wanting to try something new that may be out there for, you know, some of our veteran teachers or for administration. But if they know you as someone who is, you know, working hard for the, you know, what's best for kids, they're going to write it out and wait to see what develops. Great advice there. Many new teachers and even some veteran teachers struggle with classroom management. I think, and I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I would think that if the kids are engaged with technology, classroom management might not be an issue. Or what would you say to a new teacher who might be struggling with classroom management, coming from your perspective?
Well, I would say that management is key and needs to exist before technology is introduced, because tech actually has a way of magnifying and amplifying management issues if you don't already have a good system in place.
Wow, good.
So I would say in terms of classroom management, being consistent is huge. As new teachers, we often hear, you know, don't smile until Christmas, and be, you know, this Grinch type personality. And I actually don't really think that that's the right tack for management. I think that we've, you know, established that you need positive connections with kids. And I really think that it's through fair and consistent management protocols, procedures, consequences that kids really come to understand that you respect them as people. And once they realize that they have your respect, they're so eager to give it back. And so I really think that consistency is key, because kids can smell injustice a mile away.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So, you know, being fair and taking into account, you know, absolutely taking into account individual students. So I'm not saying establish protocols and be super rigid and never make exceptions. That's not really it at all. It's just, you know, establish those systems so that it's a comfortable learning space and kids come in the room and they know what to expect. My students, you know, I have 38 students in the morning for my morning block, and they all come in and they all log on their Chromebook and they all open up their homework documents because they know that's what's expected. So I think that that's huge for a new teacher, is just to be really consistent.
Great advice. That saying, "Don't smile till Christmas." You know, I that's how I started. I started hearing that, but I'm learning, and with every guest that I ask that question, that seems to be going out of style, and that idea where you can't smile in class. I think most of the guests will tell me that amazing teachers are happy. They're happy, and they demonstrate joy to be in the class and to be in front of all those kids. And that idea of not smiling until Christmas, I'm glad to say, is fading away. At least, you know, I hope so. Based on my speaking with other teachers, we understand that amazing teachers are gonna grab that respect easier if they're happy, you know, and they're enjoying what they're doing. They demonstrate that they're glad to be in the class.
Well, and humor goes such a long way. I mean, there's nothing like having a collective sense of humor where you're sort of this big family and you have all these inside jokes and you have all of this just connection between students, between the students and you, between you and other colleagues, and they feel it. The students are very open to feeling those emotions that kind of come rolling off of you as an individual. And I think we just can't take ourselves too seriously. We need to have that humor infused in the classroom. It makes it a place they want to be.
Right, right. I totally agree. Totally agree. Well, Jessica, if you could sit down with a new teacher just starting out in their career and you had time for just one piece of advice, what would that advice be?
It would probably be the same thing that I tell my own students every day, and that's just work hard, no excuses. As a professional, it takes constant effort to avoid stasis and to avoid professional inertia, and you really have to be actively pursuing opportunities to grow as a professional. And that concept of having the plan book that you go back to year after year after year isn't always realistic, especially if you're doing things like integrating technology.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't necessarily think that it's what's best for kids, because as we grow as professionals, what we can do for our students and with our students really changes and evolves. So I also think it's important to be connected, particularly on Twitter and other types of social media. Twitter is my daily professional development. I take 15 minutes out of my prep every day, no matter what, as sacred Twitter time to just be able to push myself and go to the hashtags that I love and go to the other educators that I feel so close to. I'm a moderator or a co-moderator for CA Ed Chat for California, and that's an important place to me and an important group of people, so that I'm just always refreshed and rejuvenated as a professional, that I can go in my classroom with that same amount of visionary passion that I entered with on the first day of school.
Awesome, awesome. The Twitter, again, I'm getting better at it. I think I'm more and more understanding the Twitter. But here's my question, and maybe I'll leave this in the podcast or not. I'm not sure. But just since you're an expert, I want to ask you, how can I get the tweets from specific people that I follow? Because when I check my timeline, I get tweets from everybody, and I'd like to just focus on a few. Is there a way I can do that?
Well, your timeline is full of everybody that you follow.
Mm-hmm.
You can toggle it. You could.
Because I know I can follow hashtags.
Yeah, you can follow hashtags, but you can also use third-party clients. So you can follow sort of a stream of specific topics and have those always loaded in TweetDeck. So a lot of people like to use TweetDeck, or I use TweetChat during chats because it makes chatting so much easier.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's just curating who you're following. You can make lists too, so that you can kind of go through and keep track of different people who bring something different to your PLN.
Right. Okay. Just curious. I want to get good at that, because I think that's a great resource as well. Like you say, Twitter has changed my my learning as well. I've learned, and I've met so many amazing people like yourself. I found you on Twitter, and here we are. I'm picking your brain, so I appreciate again you hanging out with me. But I found you on Twitter, and I'm learning more and more on how to do Twitter right. And so thank you for that. Do you have a favorite quote, Jessica, that maybe has inspired you?
I actually have two. For myself, I really like the proverb that iron sharpens iron,
Mm-hmm.
because that really dictates who I'm kind of surrounding myself with in my face-to-face personal learning network, in my Twitter learning network, in my blogs that I read, and in the people I interact with. My goal is always to get sharper based on the people that I'm sort of surrounding myself with, and to sort of return the favor. So there's this constant exchange of professional information and brainstorming and ideas and relationships. And I think that that's really important as a new teacher, because, you hear all of these scary stories of the staff lounge, and being able to sort of avoid negativity that seeps in over a while. Maybe it's a rough time at the school site, or testing's coming, or, insert reason here.
Right.
And I think that positive outlook and just having that driven focus is so necessary to just hang out with people who are sort of like-minded in that sense. And then the other quote that really has shaped me is actually an Abraham Lincoln quote. And he says, with the fearful strain that is upon me, if I did not laugh, I should die. And I
awesome.
completely love that quote because, of course, I'm not, running the country in the midst of civil war, but sometimes it's overwhelming to be a teacher. And I think that we need to just kind of step back every once in a while and sort of appreciate life for what it is, appreciate our students for who they are, and to just see the everyday humor.
Wow. Yeah. What a great quote. And today, that just brings me back today. Today was a rough day, just real busy at work. And I was at lunch supervising the kids, and some kid did something funny, and it just causes you to step back and laugh. And it's funny how that quote just just happens to connect with something happened today. But such a great quote. We got to step back and laugh a little bit sometimes, and remember what a great profession we're in. I mean, yeah. It's rough sometimes, and we have to deal with a lot of stuff that we don't want to deal with. Angry parents or policy issues. But kids are funny, and to take advantage of that and to use that to change your mood, I think is a great idea. Yeah, awesome quote. Well, what is happening now, Jessica, in your life, either professionally or personally, that you're excited about?
Well, I'm just incredibly excited at the opportunity to represent teachers for this next year in California. I have some speaking engagements coming up that I'm excited about, and perhaps the most exciting is that the 5 of us who are California Teachers of the Year for 2014, we all get to travel to Japan this summer and represent California education there. We're going to do a homestay and visit schools and talk to teachers in Japan and experience the Japanese education system and also represent California education. So I'm just super excited. I feel like that's an incredible opportunity to showcase what is good and right in education today.
Right. How nice. That is awesome. That's awesome. Well, is there anything else you'd like to share with the audience before we say goodbye, Jessica?
Well, I would just love the audience of new teachers to remember that at the end of the day, what it all really comes down to is what's best for kids. And if you just keep that love for kids close to your heart, I think that you can pretty much weather anything and keep holding on to the joy that is teaching.
That's great. That's great. Well, Jessica, it has been a sincere pleasure talking with you and picking your brain. Thank you so much for being on the podcast, and congratulations again on your award. Well deserved, and I look forward to publishing this podcast and sharing your great insights with our audience. So thank you again.
Oh, thank you so much.
So to the listeners, I know you've received a lot of great information in this episode. Now it's up to you to take it back to your classrooms and implement what you learned today. So until next time,
be amazing.
The Amazing Teacher Podcast is brought to you by SuccessInTheClassroom.com. Learn more about being an amazing teacher by visiting SuccessInTheClassroom.com or TheAmazingTeacher.com.